After a year like no other, I'd like to ask everybody in Nottinghamshire to make a pledge for a brighter, greener future. While spending more time at home, we've all appreciated and recognised the benefits we are afforded by having green spaces, clear water, trees and wildlife around us. So let's look forward into the future and save these precious natural resources. Now we can all play a part in this by reducing our waste, reusing where possible and recycling whenever we can. So why don't you join with me this January in making a Knots Recycle pledge, and in return Viola will donate £1 for every pledge to my chosen charity, which for this year is My Site Knots. Make a pledge. Make a Knots Recycle pledge and help raise money for this worthy charity while helping the environment. Thank you very much.
We get a weather update at 11 o'clock from the Met Office through to our gritting controller at Newark. He'll relay that message to the four foremen, which I'm one of, and then we relay that down to our crew that we are in charge of. That'll give you the time that we're supposed to be in the yard, the spread rate that we're supposed to be spreading at, and the weather forecast and what they're expecting and what time we're going out due to the weather. We go out with a said lorry full of salt, could be up to 10-12 tons on the back, and away you go. You spread it down, and you want to be putting it down a couple of hours at least before the forecast of it's going to drop cold, to help the traffic crush it down into the tarmac, and then hopefully when it goes freezing it'll not freeze, it just moistens it up again nicely. It's all down to the weight of the traffic and everything else. It's quite a pleasure to be out there. You know you're doing the best that you can. You're putting the salt out there, you're trying to make the roads safe. You're just in your own little world. You know what you've got to do. You put the radio on, heater's nice and warm, and you're away and enjoying it, and off you go. It's peaceful.
The three words I'd use to describe my role is team, rewarding and challenging.
Positive, team, supportive.
Three words I'd use to describe this job: gratifying, inspirational, challenging. Before this I was a hairdresser, but I wanted to do more than make people feel good. I wanted to help change their lives. I'm now part of a team that does exactly that every day.
I spend my days talking to the residents of Nottinghamshire, their families and the support services that help them on a day-to-day basis. We're the front door to adult social care in Nottinghamshire, and we're responsible for taking the time to build a picture through talking with our residents about how they lead their lives, the things that they find difficult, the things that they can do, and also looking at how they wish to fulfil their lives to the best of their possibilities. In the 5 years of working here, I've learnt so much, particularly about social care. I had no previous experience in it, but through a really good training and induction plan, I was given all of the skills and information that I needed to be able to do my job. I've also been able to grow personally and within my career since then through a personally tailored plan of support and training to keep me going.
We're a really close-knit team, and we thrive off helping the community of Nottinghamshire to live a valued and independent lifestyle. Every day is different, and there's always new things to learn, which makes the role interesting and really exciting. At the end of the day, knowing that I've helped a number of people to have a better quality of life makes every day worthwhile.
This winter, more than ever, with COVID-19 still circulating, we need help to reduce all avoidable risks. You can help protect the NHS, social care and loved ones by getting the flu vaccine. You may be eligible for the free vaccine at your GP or local pharmacy if you are over 65, pregnant or have a long-term condition. Find out if you are eligible at nhs.uk/stay well. Children up to Year 7 can get the free nasal spray at school or through their GP if they are below school age. If you are not eligible for the free vaccine, you can pay for it at your local pharmacy. The flu vaccination does not give you flu. It reduces the risk of catching flu as well as spreading it to others. If you had the vaccination in the past, that will not protect you as the flu strain changes every year, so you need to have a new one this year. It is also important to wash your hands often with warm water and soap. Use tissues when you cough or sneeze and bin used tissues as quickly as possible. Thank you for helping to protect yourself and loved ones this winter.
I can really recommend being a foster carer for Notts County Council. There's always someone walking the journey alongside you, whether that's other foster carers or social workers. It really helps to provide stability and consistency for children who really need it, and that's really rewarding as a foster carer.
Roger and I have been fostering for 35 years. We do deal with challenges, but to say we've been doing it for 35 years to me proves that it's not impossible. We learn an awful lot from these young people, and even now we're still learning.
As a foster family, we care, we want to make a difference, and we get so much fulfilment from fostering. The satisfaction of making a difference is something that money can't buy. Just seeing the smiles on the children's faces and helping them reach their potential is wonderful.
Okay, we've had our 10 seconds, so we'll get moving. Good morning. I'm Councillor Gordon Wheeler, Chairman of the committee. I'd like to welcome you all to this virtual meeting of the committee, which is being held remotely. Let me begin by wishing everyone a Happy New Year, and hopefully for better times ahead. But we are where we are, as they say, and I hope it's a much better year for all of you, those are members, those officers, and of course those who are listening in this morning as well. For the benefit of the viewers of the live stream, I will now ask the clerk of the committee, Noel McGrammon, to list other members and officers present at the meeting today.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everyone. The other committee members present are Councillors Andrew Brown, Richard Butler, Errol Henry, Stephen Garner, John Longdon, David Martin, Liz Plant, and Yvonne Woodhead. And as well as myself, we also have the following officers present today. From Police Department, we have Service Director Derek Higton, Group Manager Sally Gill, Conservation Team Manager Heather Stokes, and Nature Conservation Leader Nick Crouch. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Noel. We'll start with the minutes of the last meeting held on 26th November 2020. Seems a long time ago already now. Can I please ask members if the minutes are as true and accurate record, please? I won't have a vote unless anyone tells me they don't agree. Thank you. Item 2, apologies for absence. Noel, over to you.
Yes, no apologies. We have a full house here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel. Item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members present have any disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Do any members present have any private interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary, to declare? I take silence as a no. Thank you. In that case, we'll move to item 4, which is the review of the County Council's green spaces. Now we'll ask Sally Gill to introduce the report before we receive a presentation from Heather Stokes. So, Sally, would you like to begin, please?
Thank you, Chair. And good morning, committee. The purpose of this report is to bring to members' attention and for information and consideration the wide variety of work that the County Council undertakes on green spaces. Members have already considered trees on highways and roadside verges and a whole range of environmental issues relating to those sorts of localities. But the County Council has responsibility for a range of green spaces across the whole of Nottinghamshire, and Heather and Nick will explain what we look after and what challenges we have and what opportunities we also seek to capitalise on. So there's a whole variety of things that we do, and whilst I'm sure members will be aware of things happening in their patch, that it'd be useful for you to understand the things that are going on across Nottinghamshire. So with that, I'll hand over to Heather.
Thank you, Sally.
Good morning, members. I have a presentation for you. You'll be pleased to hear it's mostly pictures that I'm going to talk to give you an oversight of the Council's green spaces. So I'll now attempt to share my screen. Oh, blue circle. Oh, here we go. Hopefully members will be able to see the screen.
I've got nothing on my screen apart from a green circle with HS.
Oh, okay.
It's fine here.
It's fine here. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
It's fine here in Mansfield.
It's fine here in Mansfield.
Not all you can say for that.
Put another 10p in the slot.
I'm not quite sure what the problem is with
I think if you go for it, hopefully it'll rectify itself as you carry on speaking, Heather. If you would, that's
right.
It will load. It will catch up.
It will.
Yeah. I'll do that then. So
we'll send the presentation on anyway afterwards, if for any reason it falls flat, partly through the presentation, because who knows with connectivity. But you will get the presentation, believe you me, and hopefully you can hear it anyway.
Excellent, thank you. So I'll start off with a map showing our green spaces sites, so you can just get a feel for where they are. We manage over 1,200 hectares for wildlife and people, and that includes 5 sites of special scientific interest, 6 local nature reserves, 40 local wildlife sites, and 57 kilometres of trails and multi-user routes. and that work is done by 3 land management officers and 1 community liaison officer. Just some pictures to show you the kinds of habitats that we are managing. Our sites include woodlands, grassland, heathland, wetlands, water bodies. Many of them are former pit tips, restored waste sites and disused railway lines, which come with their own particular sets of issues. We also have a wide range of infrastructure on our sites, everything from sculptures like the Stickman here on the Ranges, to leftovers from the former use of the site. So this is colliery structure at Bentinck South, and also bridges. We have an awful lot of bridges, but we also have stiles, gates, fencing, benches, sluices, signage, jetties, all kinds of things. Most of the bridges are inspected on a regular programme by colleagues in Via.
Sorry, Heather, can I just pause for a minute? Councillor Martin, you've got your hand up. Is that for a particular reason, or it's by accident, or whatever?
Apologies, Chair, yes. Sorry.
That's okay. Sorry, we'll come back. Obviously, we'll take questions afterwards, David. No problem at all. Thank you, David. Heather, if you'd like to continue.
Will do. So a couple of pictures here to highlight the risk management that we undertake. We have regular site inspections by the land management officers. We also have specialist safety inspections carried out by, for example, Via's Bridges team, who inspect 61 structures across 18 sites on a rolling 6-year programme. We've put in place signage on a number of sites where vehicles may be present, and also carried out some water safety works. So signage here shown at Danes Hill, where we've got a lake, and we've also put in safety equipment on those sites. And things like fencing. So this is the colliery infrastructure at Bentinck again, which we've had to fence off to prevent people from climbing on it. We also undertake a programme of quantitative tree risk assessments to enable us to prioritise our tree works according to the risk. We've got 40 sites that are on a rolling programme of inspections carried out by a QTRA qualified inspector. And those are the ones that we've identified as having red zone trees. So where we've got big trees adjacent to public highways or residential properties, or where there's a high volume of members of the public coming through in proximity to larger trees, or where we've got things like picnic benches set among trees. So we've identified those sites, and they are carried, we get professionals in to inspect the trees and advise on the works required. The remainder of the tree inspections are carried out by the Green Spaces staff. We've also got a whole raft of things like site emergency plans, risk assessments. We have generic risk assessments for using things like hand tools, for tree planting with volunteers, for having fires on sites. A whole raft of risk assessments in place for the operation of the sites. The next few slides will illustrate some of the issues we've had to deal with or have to deal with on a regular basis on our sites. And this is where the bulk of the time and the money goes, in keeping sites safe and open to the public. So I asked Nick to provide me with a list of the regular issues that come up, and it was quite a long one. Some of the things on it are interesting, to say the least. We often deal with conflicts between users. So where we've got different users on site, they don't always sit well together. COVID has presented us with particular issues. We've seen a massive increase in use of sites, which comes with additional issues. Oops, sorry, I seem to have clicked on the wrong button there. I was trying to get rid of something. Here we go. We occasionally get pit tip fires where the residual coal on the restoration catches fire and burns underground, which is quite tricky to deal with. Lots of legacy issues from mining, and some I did see somewhere on his list that we actually currently have unauthorised livestock on one of our sites. We've got pigs currently on Rookery Park. Don't know whose they are, but we'll have to deal with it. So this slide shows you the two ends of the scale in terms of fly tipping and litter picking. The two pictures on the left are both from Manton, and the picture on the right is a litter pick before and after. We quite regularly get burnt out cars on site, and this requires us to bring someone in to remove them. People do like to leave us gifts of this nature. Many of our sites are prone to flooding. In some cases, because of their former use as pit tips, we get blocked drains and culverts. A lot of the mineral lines are quite low lying and tend to accumulate water. So top left is the Limby Trail, the flooding and the damage that was caused by flooding. We regularly have to close sites off. The bottom left is Birchwood, where we have to close the paths. And on the right, you can see we had to bring someone in to clear the drains following a flooding incident. These slides show prevention and cure. So at the top is some rather ugly looking defences that we've had to put in to deter 4x4 users on Roford Colliery. And we have a number of sites where we have issues with off-road bikes, quads, 4x4s. We do work closely with the police and other local landowners to have a joined-up approach to dealing with this kind of thing, because if we push them off one of our sites, they quite regularly then turn up on somebody else's. And part of our difficulty is that because of the nature of our sites, preventing access is hard, because if you fence one area, they will push through another area. And at the bottom, the two pictures I've got there are showing that the potholes that we regularly have to deal with. Our car parks get a lot of use, some of them, and so on the left is Shirebrook Pickwood car park, and on the right is work to restore the car park at Manton. We also quite regularly get people taking up residence on our sites. Top left is quite a well-organised campsite at Manton. Bottom left is at Birchwood. And on the right-hand side, the two pictures there are Quarry Lane, and that's a before and after the clear up. So we take a multi-agency approach to this. We work with colleagues in the communities team, and they will perform welfare assessments for us and liaise with Framework and the police. If the individuals won't move on of their own accord, then we have to evict. It can be very costly to clear up after these events because it requires specialists, because the sites are quite often contaminated afterwards. Dangerous and fallen trees are a regular occurrence on our sites, particularly after we've had a storm or snowfall. Tends to bring down trees and branches. The team are all trained to use chainsaws, and they will undertake work to keep paths and trails open, as well as doing proactive woodland management work. But where it's more difficult, we have to bring specialists in. So larger scale removal of dangerous trees requires big kit that we don't have access to. I would quite like to have access to it, but they probably wouldn't let me drive it. So we have a number of sites where we've got trees immediately adjacent to highways, active railway lines. They require specialist contractors. This can be very costly, particularly because some of the older restored sites don't necessarily have the infrastructure in place to allow access for this kind of kit. So we have to put the access in to get the kit in. So it's a hangover from some early restoration schemes. So as an example, at the Wigwam Lane, we had poplars that were planted adjacent to an active railway line. That was quite a significant cost to get someone in to take those out when they became dangerous. And the danger there was that they were going to fall on the railway line. Where possible, we do try to recoup some of the cost of doing this work by selling the timber, but it doesn't often have that much value, particularly if the trees are rotten. So most of these pictures are actually from Cotgrave, where we did remove some dangerous poplars, and then the contractor sold the timber. The cost of doing that work was of actually felling the poplars was offset by the contractor taking the timber as payment, but it cost more than that to actually get the infrastructure in, and we had to cover that cost. So that was access improvements, safety fencing, doing the surveys beforehand to make sure there were no bats in the trees, all had to be covered. We do deal with quite a lot of invasive non-native species on our sites. The pictures on the left are Japanese knotweed, on the right Himalayan balsam, and a terrapin that somebody seems to have gifted us on one of our sites. Japanese knotweed, we employ specialist contractors. They come in and inject the stems and then do foliar spraying. So in June and September, that treatment would be undertaken. We had 21 sites with Japanese knotweed on them, or 21 locations on green spaces sites, I should say. We currently have it at 9 locations, so the treatment is working. Himalayan balsam is a huge volunteer effort, and that's coordinated with partners from the Biodiversity Action Group and the Biodiversity Officer. And it's all hand pulling while the plants are in flower to prevent them setting seed. This is just a slide to give you some idea of why our green spaces sites are important. I mean, they're very important for people, for their health and well-being, for exercise. And anecdotally, we've had a huge increase in use of sites over the last year, and for volunteers and people just coming out to connect with nature. But we do know that our sites have 13 habitats of principal importance. So those are habitats that are recognised as being of importance at a national level. And there's a list there of the kind of habitats that we do have on our sites. We do have one of the most important lowland calcareous grasslands in the county on a green space site, which it's a very limited resource in the county, so clearly important for biodiversity. They're also home to some notable plant species. I started with the orchids because they're very pretty. So we have common spotted orchid on the left, frog orchid, pea orchid and pyramidal orchid in those pictures. Other notable species on our sites include things like pale St John's wort. We've got the only Nottinghamshire location for that on a green spaces site. Wild columbine, which is on one of our sites, is one of only 4 in the county. Limestone fern, we've got one of only 2 sites in Nottinghamshire for that. And also for a wide range of other plants across the county. I've got harebells, cowslips and ragwort there, ragged robin, sorry, there. The ragged robin's on Shirebrook Pitwood. They provide important habitats for mammals, so roe deer as an example. The tawny owl, which is actually being ringed rather than strangled, although it doesn't look entirely happy about it. And a wide range of reptiles and amphibians. So this is a grass snake here shown under a refugium that we've put out for it. We've got barn owls on various sites, bats across most of our sites. We think we've probably got otters and water vole, although we're not entirely sure how many sites have got water vole because we haven't actually surveyed across all sites for that. We've got common lizards, toads, and a variety of bird species. And Nick asked me to note some particular species of note. Tree pipits, woodlarks, willow tits, marsh tits, and nightjar all occur on green spaces sites. They also provide important habitats and corridors for pollinator species. So here I've got common blue and a carder bee. And some particularly notable species, dingy skipper on the left is a local biodiversity action plan species and locally scarce, and is found on a few of our sites. The photo on the right is a grizzled skipper, which is a nationally scarce species and is found on at least one of our sites. And we have been undertaking some management works for these species, working with butterfly conservation. Apart from butterflies, we actually have very little information about invertebrates on our sites, or fungi, or on things like bryophytes and lichens, all of which require a lot of input in terms of survey work to work out exactly what we've got, and would require some additional resource to do that. We work with a whole range of partners to conserve nationally and locally important species. So the picture on the left is a white-clawed crayfish, which is found on one of our sites that supports one of the best populations in the county. This is a nationally important invertebrate and species of conservation concern. And we work with volunteers through the Biodiversity Action Group to undertake control work to try and halt the spread of the non-native American signal crayfish and to protect the refugia of the white-clawed crayfish. And on the right is the water vole. We do know that it is on one site in particular. Populations of this species have declined through both habitat loss and predation by mink. And we're working with the catchment partnerships and organisations like the Trent Rivers Trust to improve habitats for this species. We work with a number of friends groups and some very dedicated volunteers to carry out proactive habitat management and help us reduce the overall cost of managing our sites. So the bottom right picture there is volunteers carrying out work on one of our sites of special scientific interest that we manage. Nick has pulled together some figures for me. We've got 4 friends groups on sites and a number of, I think there are 4 or 5 active volunteer groups who work across sites, plus a group of wardens who help us to manage Cotgrave Country Park. In total, the hours they put in 2019-20, so pre-COVID, that we estimate that they put in 5,700 hours. And if we paid them at the living wage, that would equate to nearly £51,000 worth of work that our volunteers have carried out for us to help us manage our sites. Just some more pictures, just because I like them, of volunteers carrying out boundary maintenance. I'm reliably informed the top left picture is the sheep whisperer. It's one of our regular volunteers. He's trying to get the sheep to move so they can do some boundary maintenance work. I suspect he was entirely unsuccessful. But you can see in the bottom right what they actually achieved, a significant amount of work that would have cost quite a lot of money had we had to pay for a specialist contractor to come in and do that. Where possible, we will do work ourselves. So bottom right is one of the team doing some strimming for grassland management at Shirebrook. But we've got a large number of scattered sites and a relatively small team. And we also need specialist contractors and kit. So the top left is some heather management that was being undertaken at Ollerton Assarts, SSI. And we also employ contractors to come and do things like conservation hay cuts on some of the sites, which requires the arisings to be taken away. As I said earlier, the bulk of the budget is actually spent on keeping sites open and safe for public access and dealing with those issues as they arise. But where we can access external funding, we do undertake enhancement works. So on the left there is some pollinator mix that was sown as part of the Furbeck Higher Level Stewardship Scheme, and on the right some floating reed beds that were created at Hucknall Gateway. We work with volunteers of all ages to plant trees as well. We source them from organisations like the Woodland Trust, who provide free tree packs, and we also work with the Greenwood Community Forest tree planting scheme. On the left there is a primary school at Tippings Wood, and bottom right is the Friends of Cotgrave Country Park, and we work with organisations like Age Concern as well. We do have a new scheme that's starting this year that is funded by DEFRA called Trees for Climate. It's being managed through Greenwood Community Forest in Nottinghamshire, and we are in the first year going to be creating about 17 hectares of new woodland on 2 of our green spaces sites. The idea in the future is that we will create up to 250 hectares of new woodland across the county, some of which will be on our green spaces sites. And we're also working with the Minor to Major Landscape Partnership Scheme, which the County Council hosts. We have a trees and hedges project that's running as part of that, and some habitat management works that are being undertaken. This slide was really put in just to illustrate how important our green spaces sites are. The Biodiversity Action Group has been doing something called biodiversity opportunity mapping. So it looks at existing habitats and where those might spread to should the opportunity arise. So where the opportunities are for biodiversity enhancements to take place. And you can see on here, this is a grassland connectivity map, and 4 of our green spaces sites are within that. So they're really important links in that chain of habitat. And the idea is that we will use this mapping work to inform our nature recovery networks that we're being asked to devise by government. There are other opportunities that we are looking at. This, believe it or not, is the Calverton former mineral line. I have walked the length of this. I did it behind a colleague who was much bigger than me, because as you can see, it's quite overgrown. It's part of the Green Spaces portfolio, and if we are able to get the funding to do so, what we would like to do is open it up as a multi-user route. There's about 8 kilometres of line here that links Bestwood through to Calverton, and there are links from that through to places like Papplewick Pumping Station and into the Sherwood Forest area. So it would be a real asset to the county, I think, if we can get the funding to do that. There are other opportunities that we are looking at actively. We could increase our income on sites from timber, but that would require us to put significant investment in upfront. We would need to create access and hard standings, have woodland management plans for all sites, and also go through the felling licence process. So we are actively looking at opportunities to bring money in, but some of that does require additional work and a resource up front. And you'll be pleased to hear this is the final slide. I just thought I would finish with a couple of pictures of why we are doing this. And it's about people. And most of those sites are close to major centres of population, and they are very well used by a whole range of users. The bottom right is Councillor Saddington opening the Cotgrave multi-user route, which happened a year or so ago. Thank you very much, members. I hope that gives you some insight into our green spaces and how they're managed.
Thank you, Heather. Nick, is there anything you want to add to the presentation? If you're there.
Yes, good morning. Sorry.
Hello, Nick. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I don't think so, but I'm more than happy to field any questions you might have. If there's any particular issues or points that you want to sort of find out a bit more about, then yeah, I'm more than happy to field
that's
those.
great. So we'll probably come back to you, Nick, in that case.
That's fine.
Thank you very much for that. Right, now we've had the presentation. I formally move the recommendation, which is included on page 8 of the agenda pack. And this is to recommend the committee reviews. Sorry, I'll start again. It is recommended that committee reviews the information contained in this report and its accompanying presentation and report its findings and recommendations to committees in place committee in due course for further consideration. Do I have a seconder, please?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Thanks, Henry. Thanks very much, Errol. Chairman, in that case, I would like now to open up the meeting, please. Liz, I wasn't sure if you had your hand up earlier on or not. So if you did have your hand, I'm very happy for you to come in first. I also know David Martin had his hand up as well. In fact, your hand has now gone up, Liz. So please.
I'm sorry, Gordon. Yes, I did. It was a word. Was it way back? Ecotostic water or something.
Oh, really?
I wanted to ask what that was, but I mean, I actually it was a word I'd not met before. So Heather might know what I'm talking about. Do you?
I'll bring in someone from one of the officers to help us out here.
Was it?
Heather, it was on your list.
Yeah, right at the top.
Entrophic?
Eutrophic.
Eutrophic.
Sorry.
So eutrophic means of high nutrient status.
Oh, thanks.
So you also have mesotrophic lakes and oligotrophic lakes. So oligotrophic is low nutrient, mesotrophic is middle status, eutrophic is high nutrient status. And they're the types of lakes that you generally find in lowland Britain.
Thank you very much. I still couldn't spell it.
You can use the crossword tomorrow morning, Liz. There you are.
Can I just say before you move on, Gordon, that I actually really enjoyed those slides. I found it really interesting, and thank you very much, Heather. Thank you.
I know you're a walker, Liz, and you very much value the environment. So I'm really pleased that for you to say what you just said. Thank you, Liz. We'll come back to you. I've got John Longden next, I think. Oh, sorry, David. David Martin had his hand up earlier on. David, do you want to come in at this stage?
Yeah, for me, Chair. Morning, everybody. Yeah.
Good morning to you.
Thanks for the presentation and the paper. It's very, very comprehensive. I'm very impressed with it. It's nice to see a full list scattered around the county and nobody shouting that their bit's been missed out. They're in every corner of the county. You know, I think it's a very, very complex set of affairs, green spaces. And of course, it's quite rightly, as Heather pointed out, it's never been more important as it has been in the last year. People can access their local green spaces with freedom and the surety that they're still kept in perpetuity for the use of the general public, and they are very, very welcome. I know that. I mean, I've got a lot around me, immediately around me, so I know the value of them. Prosecutions for fly tipping. In Ashfield, we've engaged the RIPA laws and used mobile cameras, and I know it's a difficult thing, but I don't know what the actual budget is for, you know, prosecutions on fly tipping, because it is a very, very expensive thing when it happens, because usually on these sites when we get fly tipping it's of an industrial scale. So that's one question for you. You know, what are we doing about being proactive about trying to put cameras to manage, you know, moving mobile cameras, because that's what we've got in Ashfield for fly tipping. Tree management is another one. It's a colossal job. It really is a colossal job, and of course it affects neighbours directly adjacent. I mean, railway lines, roads, rivers, you name it, private properties, farms. It's a colossal job, that is. So I'm just wondering how much of the budget is allocated towards that, really, because in this climate change we get more tempestuous weather, if you like. So that also applies to flooding as well, because that can be quite an issue. Do we get kissing gates and stiles? Do we get them free from the Agricultural Ministry, or do we have to buy them? Because I mean, I know farmers, they can apply for them. Perhaps one of the other councillors might be able to enlighten me on that. And can you tell me what the annual budget is for this? I know I can see the total expenditure list here, but is there an annual budget in the council's budget for it? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Thank you, David. There's quite a few questions over there. I'll let Heather begin with to explain. We've got a massive workforce, haven't we not, Heather?
Yes, all four of them.
All four of them, okay.
So, in terms of prosecutions for fly tipping, we will follow things up if we can, but I don't believe we're doing any proactive work at the moment because of the cost of doing that. Where we have particular concentrations of issues, we will work with the police and other local authorities to put cameras in. So we have done that for particular sites that have very specific issues, particularly where those are presenting a risk to other users of the site. As an example there, we worked very closely with the police to deal with access to one of our sites by off-road trail bikes, which were presenting they were coming from all over the country, advertising it on Facebook. And we worked with the police there and paid for some police presence to actually impound bikes and hand out warning notices. I'm not aware that we've done the same thing for fly tipping. Nick may be able to provide more detail on that.
Thanks, Heather. No, I don't believe we have. I mean, I think the issue with the fly tipping is that it's we don't have any regular sites where it regularly happens. I think it's fair to say where you could then predict that it might happen and put a camera in place. And generally, if it does happen, we try and prevent it from happening again by putting a barrier in or repairing the fence or whatever it might be. But I think if we did have a regular fly tipping hotspot, then using cameras is certainly something we would consider. Possibly one of these trail cameras that you can move around from site to site. So I think that is something that we would consider if the circumstances were appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, next person I've got is John Longdon.
Just unmuting myself, Chair.
Okay.
I'm well pleased on the whole with this report. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool tree hugger, by the way, so I'm well into tree planting. I think we should maximise that wherever possible. But there's one thing that does the question is, we noticed you moved some trees at Cockgrave, like a very major healthy trees. Was that area replanted as an extra compared with the normal planting policy we are planning? Or any other sites like where trees are removed, are they positive constantly replanting? That's the main question on that issue. As for Councillor Martin with his kissing gates, I've had a problem. We tried to get one. Unfortunately, the landowner will not allow it. So the landowners have something to say about that issue. So that's a bit of information for you, Councillor Martin. It might talk to footpaths about that issue. And what else was I going to say? Oh yes, I noticed with the balsam on page 3 of the other pages, the invasive Himalayan balsam along the River Leen. Now I know the River Leen of old from my younger days. What condition is the River Leen in? Can anybody tell me? Is it how clean is it getting from when it was a poison sewer? That'd be absolutely correct. Yes, I'm a tree hugger, Chair, and on the whole, I'm always in favour of replanting trees and constantly planting trees wherever possible. It's the way we have to go, whether we like it or not. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Councillor Longdon. Obviously, our ambition about tree planting is in the report, but I will bring in both Nick and I probably at this point I probably just bring in you, Nick. Is that right? Or Heather?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, Councillor Longdon, at Cockgrave, where we had to take the poplars out, and I mean we don't take trees out unless we have to. So at Cockgrave, we'd had a survey done, and those poplars were deemed to be unsafe and seriously unsafe. They're obviously along one of the main paths in the park, so we had no option but to take those trees out. And we have replanted in that area with native broadleaf species. Similarly, some poplars we took out at Limby Ranges, we have replaced those. So I think as a general rule, where we're taking individual trees out here and there, especially if they're in woodlands, we don't replace them because you know, there are plenty of other trees. But where we are taking out a discrete block of planting, we will normally always look to replace those unless there's a good reason not to.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's good news. River's own species as well. That's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can answer the question about kissing gates and infrastructure.
Please, yes, sorry, I missed early on. Yes, please, Nick.
No, that's fine. So yeah, I mean, most of our paths are permissive paths, so they're not rights of way. We do have some rights of way on our land, but not many. So the cost of putting in gates and stiles and repairing and replacing them all falls to us. We don't get any help in with funding that infrastructure.
Thank you. Since you mentioned Cotgrave, John, I'll bring in, although his hand isn't up, your fellow tree hugger and a local member, Richard Butler, who could probably comment.
Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, well, no, it was quite funny that as Councillor Longdon was speaking, I was about to click my hand up sign, and you won't be at all surprised to know that I did want to say a few words about Cotgrave, but I'm also very conscious of the fact that we must not get too parochial with this meeting. But having said that, I will talk about it. But before I do, when you look at the slides that we saw a few minutes ago from Heather of Alder Green Estate, it just makes you feel really, really proud, and just reminds us as to what we've got in Nottinghamshire. And I mean, people, well, not so much nowadays because of the COVID situation, but people were forever buzzing off and racing off to other parts of this country or abroad for this sort of enjoyment. But here we have it on our own doorsteps. And sometimes, in the case of it, in my case, literally on the doorstep. But wherever you are in Nottinghamshire, everyone has got access to wonderful natural parks, resources, which, as we all know, is so very, very important. The poplars, incidentally, yeah, I mean, when it was, it must be 3 or 4 years now since those went. And at the time, there was a little bit of local comment because they were very distinctive, as old poplar trees are. They're very tall. There were a lot of them. They were very visible. But they went, and nature is a wonderful thing, and it recovers and rejuvenates naturally and very quickly. You would not know that the poplars have been there now, but what's there now is just wonderful greenery, wonderful trees, wonderful countryside. So please be assured on that. So no one likes to see trees being cut down, but sometimes you just have to, otherwise you have all sorts of unintended consequences. So no, fantastic. Now, just with regards, now you've got me, Chairman. You can't stop me. You see.
Oh dear, big mistake. It's all your fault, Councillor Longdon.
So, with regards to the report as a whole, it's really very helpful because most people, whether it's councillors or members of the public, will talk about country parks, but they don't talk about green estates. And to have a report like this that defines green estates as being as important as country parks is very helpful indeed, because we need to start talking about them more. And I know that in various parts of the report we talk about promoting our green estate. I still think there's more to do on this, and I think this is because one of the things we've got to do in the recommendation is to make recommendations to the relevant committee, Communities and Place Committee, and I think one of those should be that we do somehow, and I know it's not easy because of all the reasons we know, but somehow up the profile of the green estates in general. And this report is a very good starting point for that. So if this, I don't know whether this can even be turned into some sort of not so much a committee report, but a sort of for want of a better word, a brochure, a leaflet, something from the county council that is available on the website and even in libraries, so people can read for themselves just what we've got in Nottinghamshire, and the county council is responsible for and is committed to, because it's wonderful. It really is, and I can't emphasise enough just how much they all mean to me and more to us as well, and to so many other people. Now, just getting a little bit more serious for a moment, though. Well, something else I think is important as well is when you look at this report. If you look at if I find the right page, yes, if you find the front page of it, it refers to the Green Estates Development Strategy and Plan 2013 to 2023. Well, we're in 2021 now, and 2023 is not far away. So hopefully, as part of our recommendations and thoughts today, we need to start seriously thinking about what we're doing from 2023 to 2033, assuming it's done on a 10-year cycle. And I very much hope that the commitment from the county council that the county council has shown for so many years will continue for the forthcoming 10 years and more for the Green Estate. And also linked to that is on page 10 in GE10 to explore new models of site management, etc. There's a paragraph there that refers to there are other countywide and regional agencies that may be better placed to manage our sites and facilities, etc. I mean, yes, that's absolutely true and absolutely correct, but at the same time, we must be very, very careful that we don't lose overall control of what we, as the owners of and custodians, if you like, of these sites, the council, we don't lose sight of the fact of what we want, and we still do as much as possible to keep in control as to what the future is for these various sites. But no, it's a really good report. Very pleased to see it, and thank you for the mentions about being parochial about Cotgrave. We have a small but keen friends group. Sometimes, inevitably, there are differences of opinion between the friends group and the council, and that's usually down to the fact they're simply so enthusiastic that sometimes some of the things that we want may not be necessary for all sorts of reasons. But friends groups are really good and they're to be encouraged. And I must put on record my appreciation to the whole team, massive team, but particularly Nick and our officer on the ground, Lee Scudder, for the amount of time and effort that they spend both physically working in the park, but also working with the friends and other interested people. So I'm sorry I've gone on a bit there, Mr. Chairman, but it is something close to my heart, and I know it's very important to many local residents. Thank you.
Your thoughts and comments are very welcome indeed, Councillor Butter. Thank you, Richard. Yeah. And I brought you at that point. I brought you that point because it made sense, because Councillor Longden did mention Cotgrave. It seemed a logical thing to do. Apologies if I'm not taking slightly out of turn.
Yeah. Can I have an answer about the River Leen, please?
Sorry, of course. Won't be a moment, Yvonne. Sorry. Nick, do you want to deal with that one?
Yes, I don't have any hard data at my fingertips. I can dig out some info. So the water quality is monitored by the Environment Agency, and they classify all our rivers depending on their biological and chemical quality. So if you're particularly interested, Councillor Longden, I can dig that information out for you. But I think that there's no doubt that the water quality in the Leen is much better than it used to be, and that's evidenced by the fact that it's the most important river in the county for white-clawed crayfish, which was one of the species that Heather mentioned earlier. So yes, no doubt that it is much better than it was before.
I was getting the crayfish in, so we must be getting a lot cleaner. I can't remember, it was a sewer, you see, like the area wash. That's nice and clean to God what it used to be. These rivers all coming cleaner. But as it was commented on page 3, I thought I asked a question for its condition. But you answered it quite well, actually.
Okay.
Thank you. Getting livestock, natural livestock in there with the crayfish and everything else, it's got to be on a plus, a big plus.
Yeah.
Can I leave it, Nick, that you liaise with Councillor Longden, get the information he's asked for.
Thank you, Chair.
And obviously, if there's anything which needs to come back here to this committee, again, if you could let us have that, that would be very welcome as well. Yvonne, thank you for your patience. And I do apologise for taking a slightly out of turn. It just seemed a logical thing to do at the time. Thank you.
Oh, no problem, Chairman.
Thank you.
I quite understand the logic behind it. Now, I've truly enjoyed reading this report and all of the yellow pages. So I find it quite remarkable, really, that, and I'm looking for the pages I've marked out here while I'm talking, that on page 7, we need to ensure that the experiences of such the highway quality and that our facilities, such as footpaths and furniture, are well maintained. And then we go on to page 10. Such greenways are critical for the greater public enjoyment of the outdoors for walkers, ramblers, cyclists and equestrian users, which is all very good until you come to Blidworth. And then we seem to fall a little bit flat. And I'm going to page 13, where we talk about Sustrans, Network Rail and UK Coal. Now, New Lane at Blidworth is part of the Sustrans cycle route. It is a single track lane. It's used by walkers, cyclists, horses and riders, disabled, and it's normally the village car park because we don't have one. But that lane is close enough to other amenities that we can park there. So when Newark and Sherwood get a planning application for 81 houses, which takes part of footpath 1 out of its route and onto highway, and it comes out onto this single track lane where we have walkers, cyclists, horses, disabled. I find it very, very hard that highways didn't comment the way that they should have, in my opinion, on the loss of this facility. And that footpath number 1, I've walked all my life because our library used to be up Main Street. So you went up footpath 1, up Marriott Lane, you crossed the road and you were in the library until it was made its own building. It was in the church at the time. Then it was made its own building further down into the village. So I find it very hard when we have an application in for 81 houses that's going to come out onto this single track lane in the centre of Blidworth, and highways do not make any comment on that. That could have given us a leeway to turn this plan down. When I contacted highways or via, I was told, well, we're on your consultee. So why on earth do we consult if it's not for what's going to happen on the highway? I don't understand that comment at all, and I have raised that. Because this puts a lot of people now in danger, including cyclists on Cycle Route 6, and anyone going up onto the meadows using footpath 1. Because part of that will become highway for this new estate that they're going to build for 81 houses. So taking all that in this report into consideration, something should have been brought up at the planning stage at Newark and Sherwood District Council, and yet none of it was. We had half a line of Cycle Route 6, and that was because I phoned in and I said, this is part of Cycle Route 6. Nobody took that up. Nobody. So I feel very disgruntled when I see all that we're doing everywhere else, and Blidworth is now being, well, what can I say, 81 houses on a single track lane coming out in the middle of the village. Detrimental. That's the word I would use, detrimental to everybody in Blidworth. I'll leave it there, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Thanks, Yvonne. Sally, you may wish to comment, but I'm actually sitting opposite Derek Hickton as well, who will say something on that as well. Yvonne.
The instances Councillor Woodhead's referring to relate to a planning application, and I do know Jan Vitko, my Highways DC team manager, has been speaking to Councillor Woodhead about that case. there is a lot of issues relating to that that's perhaps better dealt with outside of this committee, where we're talking about footpaths in general. But I do appreciate Councillor Woodhead has some specific concerns, and I will follow that up with Yvonne outside of this meeting.
Thank you, Sally.
Derek Hickton, yeah, I was on mute. I apologize. Derek Hickton is quite happy to have a conversation with you, Yvonne, as well as, if that helps. So perhaps either you could, as Nick is going to do with Councillor Longden, perhaps you and Derek could discuss this later on, together with Sally's input as well. Is that all right?
Yes, that's fine, Chairman. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. No, thank you very much for that. Councillor Brown, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, thanks to Heather for a fantastic presentation. Very interesting. Just one question I have is to the team: are you planning on adding any more sites to the to Nottinghamshire green spaces? And if so, how would you acquire these? Because my thoughts are, I'm involved in the Normanton-on-Soar ferry, which Nottinghamshire gave quite a lot of money to under the local improvement scheme. And the ferry is on the footpath network that connects Leicestershire with Nottinghamshire, from our footpath onto theirs, and linked together with the ferry. The wildlife along there, along the River Soar, we do have otters and we do have ratty, the vole, as well as many other bird species and plant species on that site where the ferry is. It's, in my opinion, and in our volunteers' opinion, it's not very well advertised within Nottinghamshire. I know it's not managed by Nottinghamshire. It's managed by the team of volunteers at Normanton-on-Soar. Would it be possible to include it in any advertising you're doing on green spaces in Nottinghamshire, even though it doesn't belong to you? And the second question was, are you intending to expand the network?
Thank you, Andy. I'll let Heather respond to you. Thank you, Andy.
No, thank you for that, Councillor Brown. At the moment, we aren't planning on expanding the portfolio of green spaces sites, unless there is funding to manage them long term. Clearly, we need to consider that. However, if there is funding available for specific purposes that would enable us to expand particular sites, perhaps, or for tree planting, then we would look at trying to bring that in. But again, we would need to consider what the long-term management costs of that land would be to the council. In terms of Normanton-on-Soar, I think if we're thinking about putting together something that promotes our sites, and that is an online presence promoting green spaces sites, then provided the local groups are willing to have their sites promoted in that way, we could provide links to that. I'm struggling to think how else we might do that at the moment, but we can have a think about that and come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's an asset I think Nottinghamshire should be proud of. It's only one of two remaining chain ferries in the UK. The other one being at on the River Severn at Simmett's Yacht. It's been there 800 years on the site, and you know, I'm one of the volunteers. I'm a qualified ferrymaster, and it's actually registered with Lloyd's Shipping as a passenger carrying ferry. We carry 10 passengers at a time, and all proceeds go into helping projects within the village, like the village hall. But it does, you know, it is part of Nottinghamshire's footpath network as well. So I just think it should be promoted in any way you can. And I do know that the other volunteers would certainly welcome any form of advertising we can give it to promote it. It's a historic part of Nottinghamshire, even though it's in the most southerly point of the county, and we should be proud of what we've got.
It has just occurred to me, Councillor, that one way of promoting it might be through the heritage aspect, and I will talk to my heritage tourism and archaeology colleagues to see whether there's any way that we can put something out maybe on social media that would help to promote.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so as with previous speakers, in that case, Heather, if you would continue to liaise with Councillor Brown. That'd be extremely helpful. I must say at this point, because I'm going to forget otherwise, you mentioned our wonderful band of volunteers earlier on, Heather, and how much it would cost the county council if we didn't have the volunteers available. It's not a question how much it would cost. I think we have to, and I like to publicly acknowledge their tremendous contribution to what they do to look after our green estate, and to thank them. And I'm sure every single member here today would echo that and beyond as well. So please, if this meeting would record our appreciation to all our volunteers. Thank you. Is there any other member want to speak? Because Councillor Martin.
Yeah, Chair. I asked a question about the annual budget for it, if you could tell me what that was.
Apologies, sorry.
Yeah, so also as well, who's the first or the most direct contact to get in touch with over repairs regarding the green estate? Also as well, I'll just let you know that we tidied up a stretch of the Cromford Canal just over the River Erywash on the very western edge of Jacksdale, and in the last 3 years we have a thriving water vole population that now live there, along with kingfishers and all the rest of the wildlife, and it's riddled with white claw crayfish, absolutely full of them. So I just thought I'd let you know that. Cheers.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to say, Heather and Nick, on that?
I don't actually have the budget figures in my head, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's fine. If you get back at some point.
But we can certainly get back to you with that.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
in terms of contact for repairs, I would suggest, he's going to hate me, but I would suggest Nick would be the best point.
He's listening, Heather.
No, that's fine. And it's great to hear about the crayfish and the water voles. Yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you. Councillor Plant, Liz.
Yeah, unmute, Liz, unmute.
She's getting there. She's getting there.
Sorry, I've noticed that actually that Maureen's hand's been up for a while.
Yeah,
but
Maureen
well,
knows.
yeah, but I'm not a member. Oh, of course not. No.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's. I haven't forgotten Maureen. In
I
fact,
will be brief.
no one's reminded me anyway. Thank you.
Just actually, I wanted to support what Richard has actually said earlier on, because that was one of my points in terms of communicating and sort of advertising, obviously, our green spaces more, without a doubt. And especially, I mean, as Heather has said, and we all know, in terms of COVID, so many more residents have been out there. And obviously what we want to do is maintain that as much as possible. I don't often quote Councillor Doddy in meetings, but in the House scrutiny we were in earlier this week, he was mentioning how many more of his patients are coming forward. I don't know actually how they actually get to see a doctor. It's probably all virtual, but in terms of pre-diabetes cases, and obviously that's all to do with obesity and health, and the more we get people out there actually walking, it's obviously going to have well, it will make an impact on the NHS. So I think it's getting that message over, and obviously I was pleased to hear to read in the report that your health walks are obviously being encouraged and working with the districts, and they do a lot of work, and obviously that's good. Also in terms of probation and the community payback teams, I think that's an excellent piece of work to be going on. And then I had a question. I wanted to ask, Heather mentioned income, and presumably income varies from year to year. Again, in the report, it says something about coal recovery. So it said the Green Estate, including the potential for coal recovery on some of the older restoration schemes where this is deemed appropriate and cost effective. So I was wondering where and if that is actually going on. What are my other questions? Yes, and then there is obviously a sort of list of places that you'd like to get rid of, disposal. I sort of wondered what they were and where they were, and if we could perhaps, see that. And what's my last one? Oh yes, the list for disposal. Oh yeah, and obviously the bridges. Now, I would also like to know which bridges come under our green spaces. I know you've mentioned them, but we haven't got a list of them. So I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Plant. Thanks, Liz. Heather or Nick or Sally, whichever one, any of you.
Well, shall I kick off and then
please, Heather, if you would. Thank
Nick
you.
Can chip in as well. In terms of coal recovery, we have looked at that on at least one site in recent years. Unfortunately, I think the market at the moment precludes us taking any of that forward. From memory, Nick, I think the company that came forward wanting to take that forward has pulled out, so we aren't progressing.
In short, yes, and with the imminent closure of the power stations as well, that market has effectively fallen away. And obviously, there's issues about whether we should be promoting fossil fuel, use as well. So I think coal recovery as a concept has effectively died, I think.
Yeah. Delete that.
And we can certainly provide a list of sites that have been disposed of in their various forms. Some of the larger pit tip sites are now on lease to the Forestry Commission, and they manage those with community rangers on a long-term lease. So, but there are other sites as well that we can provide for you. And we do have a list of the bridges and other structures that are inspected, so we can provide that as well.
Thank you. That'd be very helpful indeed. Now, I've got hands up from Councillor Brown and from Councillor Longdon. I'm not sure if these are legacy hands or whether you want to come back with something else. If the legacy hands, if you wouldn't mind taking them down, please.
Apologies.
No, apologise. That's just fine. John, are you got your hand up still? Councillor Longdon? No, I'm assuming that's a legacy hand. In that case, she's been very, very patient. Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Chairman. No, thank you, Liz, but no, I'm not a member, but usually at the end when you've all spoken, any odds and sods, forgive me, who happen to come into the meeting can then have a conversation.
I wouldn't call you that.
First of all, can I just say, Heather, that was terrific. I know you were getting somewhat fraught. You'd got to do this big report and this presentation, but you and Nick between you did an excellent job. And for anybody who doesn't know who to get hold of, I always get hold of Nick. It just so happens he lives not far away from me and in my area. And he's very, very helpful on a variety of things. Chairman, when I joined you all in 2013, I sat on the Culture Committee. So I was part and parcel of actually drawing up, not drawing up, the officers drew it up, the strategy and the plan for 2013 to 2023. And as Richard Butler has quite rightly said, we need to be, as a council, looking to the future. We've got some wonderful areas right across the county, and including my own area, which goes right up to Lincolnshire. Councillor Brown's talked about Leicestershire. Yes, I'm up at Lincolnshire. And we have the Trent Vale Trail that's been an absolute godsend while we've been in COVID. Everything has been wonderful for the health and well-being of the public that we serve. So what I would like to see, Chairman, if it's at all possible, just as an ordinary member and not a member of your committee, but I would like you all very much to push a new strategy forward, help the officers, all four of them, because bless them, they could do with a bit of assistance from some senior members of the authority and ordinary members like me, but they could, and let's really get the message out. I don't think we publicise ourselves enough. I really don't, and that's no criticism of Heather and the other three, Nick and the other two, Mark and the lady that you mentioned. That is no criticism of all four of you. You can't do everything. I think we, as an authority, have got to get the message out to the public, because a lot of people won't know you've got these wonderful green estates all over the place and so close to a lot of urban areas who are desperately in need of space to walk. Also areas like my area and like Mr. Brown's area, Councillor Brown's area, and Cotgrave. We'll have to mention Cotgrave again. But seriously, we have got a lot of rural areas that need to be publicised, and I would welcome some form of promotion. How you do it, I don't know, but I think you need to speak to comms, and I think you need to get comms and Derek and the team actually sitting down with comms and saying, right, we've got to get the message out to the public, to all the parishes, because we've got a lot of parishes. Certainly in Newark and Sherwood, Yvonne and I know, we have a lot of parishes. We have 83, and we really, some of them will not know what's going off at Cotgrave, not know what's going off down on the Leicestershire, Nottinghamshire border, won't know about everything. So we need to publicise.
Oh dear, I know.
Sorry. Thank you.
Don't apologise. No, for a start.
But well done to all four, but
That's
in
what I was gonna say.
particular to Heather and Nick today for a fabulous presentation. And I hope the public, if the public are listening, I hope they've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed it, and I think all of us have enjoyed it. Can I just ask one question on on the report on page 6, item 12, when Heather has put in the report about funding, when funding can be secured. For example, you got funding to proactively sought to deliver enhancements to networks of sites. Where do we go for funding? Can we not go further to DFE and not get, or is it DFE I want, the Department of Agriculture, you know, Mr. Eustace and all the others. I need us to promote us to head office, as I always call Westminster. And I think we need to be asking for some more funding. You know, we've got real issues with the public and health, and we need to publicise it, and we need to get funds and do more, because I'd like a bit more money, Heather, Sally, for the Trent Vale Trail to finish it off. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members, for letting me rant on.
I was waiting for the last bit, actually, Sally. No, but seriously, I actually had it written down myself about the funding. I know officers try very hard to secure funding. I assume you mean DEFRA is one of the sources possibly for funding. Well, firstly, before I go any further, I'd entirely endorse what you've just said, Maureen. Not only is an excellent presentation, but the amount of hard work that goes on behind the scenes, which we don't always appreciate. So yeah, please, I'd like to also record my appreciation, not just from me, on behalf of this committee as well. And I'm quite happy to let Heather, Nick or Sally comment on the points you just raised. They can decide amongst themselves who gets the
if I start, I think councillors, you've all raised a lot of interesting issues and given us some quite challenging questions, and certainly there are a lot of things for us to go away and do some work on for you, and then come back to this committee for starters with hopefully some answers to some of your detailed questions, and some you've put some challenges to us, particularly many of you have mentioned about promotion and things. So hopefully we can come back to you with some thinking and with some ideas about things that the way we publicise things currently, what else we can do, and indeed you may have other ideas and things that you want us to try or do, and certainly, yeah, Councillor Brown, the chain ferry. I mean, I personally wasn't aware of that, and that's something that I'll be going away to look into more, and hopefully when we can get out and about, I'd like to come down and visit that, because that sounded really interesting, and yes. I didn't know about it, so I would imagine lots of other people didn't know about it either.
We are on Facebook, Sally.
Right, I'll be looking out for you, because that sounds absolutely fascinating. So I think members, you've given us a lot of things to think about and respond to, and we will be doing that for you, and I'll hand over to Heather and Nick if they've got anything further.
I think in terms of funding, we look to any sources that are available, depending on the scale of the project. So for things like multi-user routes, it's not a cheap thing to do. So we need to be looking to government agencies or places like the Enterprise Partnership and their funding streams to see if we can fit within their requirements. For smaller projects, we will go to places like the lottery to try and bring funding in. But all of those funding bids do take staff resource to put them together. So we need to deploy that resource quite carefully and make sure that we're going for things that we're fairly confident that we will be able to achieve.
Thank you. Well, what will happen, obviously, after this meeting, as it says in the recommendations, officers will consider what's being said here, come up with a list of recommendations, which will come back as committee before it goes on to committees in place. Again, it's in the recommendations there. Let me start. I've got a couple of other speakers coming up here, but I think Councillor Garner has been very patient. So can I bring? Sorry, Nick, did you want to respond to that particular?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the funding front, I mean, as a local authority, the funding that we have access to can sometimes be limited. But this is one of the benefits of having friends groups on our site, of which we don't have many. But as an example, the Friends of Cotgrave Country Park have just secured £16,000 from, I think, Severn Trent Water. To enhance the, thank you, Councillor Butler, to enhance the grassland resource at that site. So we're going to be overseeding the existing grassland with a native wild seed mix to improve the botanical diversity and benefit pollinators and insects, etc. So that's an example of how having a friends group tied to a site can be a significant benefit in terms of being able to access funding pots that we might not be able to access directly ourselves. In terms of promotion, I agree that we don't sell ourselves as well as we could do. The amount of information on the internet about green spaces is quite limited and could certainly be improved. I think, you know, we're always doing interesting and unusual things on our green spaces sites, and I think having a link to comms and, you know, putting out a tweet on a weekly basis about, you know, what we've been up to on green spaces is something we could do. My only concern about promotion is that it can be a double-edged sword, and as we've seen at Cotgrave, where everyone who lives locally and further afield has discovered Cotgrave and found out what a great place it is, and now the car park is beyond capacity. We've had parking issues, and we've now got to look at how we can extend the car park to accommodate the additional visitors which are now coming to the site. So we do need to be a bit careful about how we're promoting sites and why we're promoting sites, but I agree, we do need to do more on promotion.
Thanks very much, Nick, much appreciated. So sorry, Councillor Garner, you've been again very patient. I do apologise for keeping you waiting. Would you like to go now, Stephen?
Thank you. I've got a bit of a cough. Yes, fantastic presentation. Thank you for all of you who's presented this. I've got, I heard Nick say white-clawed crayfish, they're only in Lee Valley. We've got some at Mansfield at Cordwell Brook. Was you aware of that? And I know that there's been a planning permission given, and we feel that place is getting vulnerable and we'll probably lose them there. Can you put any input in that about how it can be saved?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Garnett. Apologies. When I referred to the River Lean, I think it's fair to say that it's the biggest and probably most important population in the county in terms of length of watercourse and the sort of the numbers of crayfish. But yes, absolutely, there are pockets of crayfish elsewhere in the county. They are vulnerable because they're also isolated, and the Caldwell Brook is a prime example of that. My colleague Chris Jackson had been inputting into the planning application. So this is the land to the east of the Caldwell Brook, isn't it? Yes. Yes, my colleague Chris Jackson has been inputting into that because he's our sort of in-house expert when it comes to all things crayfish. So I will double check with him what his current involvement is with that, and if you'd like, I can put him in touch with you.
Yes, thank you for that. Just like an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Councillor Garner. I've got Andy Brown next. Andy, are you coming back in again, or was a legacy? Yeah, that's fine. No, that's okay. Of course.
It's a very quick one, following on from what Sally said regarding the ferry, that she didn't know about it.
it's my opinion there should be a little bit more joined up thinking here, because first of all, the county council gave money towards the ferry to renovate it, and I had the pleasure of opening it on East Midlands today. And secondly, the county council have provided brown tourist signs. We've got 3 tourist signs, the brown ones that went in about 2 years ago. So I just think departments should be sort of talking to each other a bit more to let the green spaces people know what's going off.
I agree.
That's it.
No, that's great. Thank you. No, point taken entirely.
Or joined up thinking, or
Thank you.
joined up communication.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Thanks, Andy. I've got, as far as I can tell, Yvonne, is it Richard Butler as well?
Yes, yeah, but Yvonne, let Yvonne go first.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Thank you, Richard. Yvonne, would you like to go now?
Yeah, Chairman, sorry. As
No,
I didn't see any of the slides that we used, could I have a copy, please? Would that be possible?
They will go out electronically to every member of this committee. Now, once they go electronically, if a member wants a printed copy, yes, please, but we won't automatically send out printed copies because they are expensive. But if you've got a special reason for wanting a printed version, we'll get you that. But initially, it'll go out electronically. So if that's okay.
Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, you should send it to the whole of the council if it's not too costly.
Electronically, it won't be.
Yes.
I'm looking over at Derek Higdon. Electronically won't be a problem, will it, Derek? Yeah, we can look at that. The answer, of course, I've got back. We can look at that. Okay, if that's all right. Thank you, Maureen, for that. I've got, sorry, Yvonne, Richard, sorry, you were very patient. Thank you.
Yes, very briefly. I was just really going to add to what Nick was saying about obviously talking positively, wanting people to visit the green spaces. But yes, we have got a little caveat there with regards to the number of people. The biggest caseloads I've had since just before Christmas, and indeed continuing now, is the issues of all the parking, the overflowing, the blocking of roads, parking on residential streets, and so on and so forth. So there is a slight danger of being a victim of our own success. But if I don't know what the answer is in persuading people, perhaps, to be sensible about where they park, how they park. I know it's difficult to share cars at the moment for obvious reasons, but it's just a little caveat there, because we love people visiting as in all the facilities, but there can be sometimes unintended consequences, as the old mailbox at the moment currently knows only too well.
Unmute, Chairman.
I apologise. I was talking to the officer. That's why I was on mute. Councillor Martin, did you want to come back in again?
Yes, Chair. Just one thing.
That's okay. Of course. Yeah, sure.
Send a copy of the Green Spaces Development Strategy to the planning departments at the 7 districts and boroughs.
Got it.
We'll make a note of that. Yeah, make a note of the request. Of course,
because we in Ashfield are committed to planting 1,000 trees a year, so we could actually probably plant them on some of the county green space.
Well, that's excellent, because I know Russell Borough Council similarly are planting a whole stack of trees and already have started on this. And I do try to step wherever I can, make certain there is this joined up process. Yeah. So any information which you,
I do think that joined up process as well will probably have had more weight in Councillor Woodhead's division if they'd have had that strategy with them.
Yeah, you've got quite a number of officers listening to that, David. I'm sure we can take that forward.
Yes, thank you.
Join the thinking, as you referred to. I think everyone who wants to speak has spoken. If I've missed anyone's hand, sometimes it's hard to actually tell. But if I have, please do speak up now. Have we missed any? If any members have spoken, have we missed anything? If we have, again, please remind us. But hopefully we've caught everything. And I know you're going to get answers back. And the committee will obviously get updated as well. Officers I know have been ferociously writing as well, so that we've got the recommendations coming forth as per the report itself. So unless there's anything else, I will now go to a vote on the recommendations. The best way I'm going to do this, everyone's, well, unless I misunderstood the mood of the committee this morning, seems to be very happy with the recommendations you have in front of you, the recommendation in front of you. So unless anyone is against or wishes to abstain, and if you do, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll take it. It's you're all supportive.
Yeah.
Okay, I take it therefore as everyone is supportive. Well, that's very, very helpful. Thank you. And once again, I reiterate my thanks to the officers for putting all this together. And particularly Heather. Sorry, Heather, if I'm singling you out for your presentation as well. You've done a lot of talking, so I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move. Noel, are you happy with that? Just checking. Yeah, just checking with Noel. He's happy with what we've just done. In that case, we move to the work programme. And who'd like to take that one from the officers concerned? Sally, do you?
Councillor Wheeler, I'm happy to present the report.
Move to Derek in that case. Sorry. Yeah, Derek, take the work programme. Thank you.
But I think from members' perspective, it's relatively self-explanatory. We can see what the agenda is for the next meeting, and that will enable us to kind of catch up with the conversation that has been had this morning, and it will also enable us to cover off the other issues that we've set out there on the forward plan in terms of the follow-up report from the waste conversation at the last meeting, and we'll also introduce an item around gully cleansing as well, following the winter that we're currently experiencing. Happy to take any questions that members may have.
And it's also a good opportunity, as you can see from the report, to bring together the various issues we've discussed as a committee and to summarise those. That's already in the papers anyway. Does anyone else would like to comment on anything at all, please? No? Okay. In that case, if we're all happy to, we don't need a formal vote on this one. If we're all content with what we have, the proposal in front of us. Thank you. Well, finally, can I just thank you for giving up your time today and for the very healthy discussions we've had. We really welcome that, and it's never a problem if anyone wants to, members and participants like Maureen, who always welcomes Maureen's thoughts, who want to ask more than the fair number of questions. That's never a problem. That's what we're here for. So thank you once more for everyone for the contributions today, and thank you to those members of the public who are listening in. Hopefully you've also got something out of it, and you also agree with what we've been saying this morning. What an excellent presentation it's been. Well, stay safe, all of you folks, and we'll catch up with you probably quite soon. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you.
This winter, more than ever, with COVID-19 still circulating, we need help to reduce all avoidable risks. You can help protect the NHS, social care and loved ones by getting the flu vaccine. You may be eligible for the free vaccine at your GP or local pharmacy if you are over 65, pregnant or have a long-term condition. Find out if you are eligible at nhs.uk/staywell. Children up to year 7 can get the free nasal spray at school or through their GP if they are below school age. If you are not eligible for the free vaccine, you can pay for it at your local pharmacy. The flu vaccination does not give you flu. It reduces the risk of catching flu as well as spreading it to others. If you had the vaccination in the past, that will not protect you as the flu strain changes every year, so you need to have a new one this year. It is also important to wash your hands often with warm water and soap. Use tissues when you cough or sneeze, and bin used tissues as quickly as possible. Thank you for helping to protect yourself and loved ones this winter.